All right, good evening. Good evening and happy new year. Want to move forward with the meeting from the Emergency Service Council meeting, January 21st, 2021. With that, can we have a roll call, please?
There we go. Okay, thank you. Atherton. Belmont.
Davina Hurd, present.
Thank you very much. Brisbane.
Erin Cunningham, present.
Thank you. Burlingame.
Ann O'Brien Kegren, present.
Thank you. Colma.
Diana Colvin, present.
Thank you very kindly. Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Lisa Gaucher, present.
Thank you. Foster City.
John Freeman, present.
Thank you. Half Moon Bay.
Deborah Penrose, present.
Thank you. Hillsborough. Menlo Park. Millbrae. Pacifica.
Sue Vaterlos here.
Thank you. Portola Valley.
John Richards here.
Thank you. Redwood City. San Bruno.
Rico Medina here.
Thank you. San Carlos.
John Dugan here.
Thank you. City of San Mateo. South San Francisco. Woodside. And of course, President Canepa, Supervisor of the Board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 12 members. We do have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Belleville. That brings us to item 2, approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Make that motion.
Cunningham, have a second, please.
I'll second.
Kegren with the second. Can we have a roll call, please? Mr. Clerk.
Atherton. Belmont.
Aye.
Brisbane.
Aye.
Burlingame.
Aye.
Colma.
Aye.
Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Aye.
Foster City.
Aye.
Half Moon Bay.
Aye.
Hillsborough. Menlo Park. Millbrae. Pacifica.
Aye.
Portola Valley.
Aye.
Redwood City. San Bruno.
Aye.
San Carlos.
Aye.
City of San Mateo. South San Francisco. Woodside. Supervisor Canepa, the motion carried unanimously.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you. That brings us to item 3, the county update on OES. Mr. Callaghy.
Yes, thank you, President Canepa. I appreciate just a few minutes to talk about this. So we recently, as I reported last time, converted the operations of OES from the sheriff's office to the county manager's office, and it's managed and under Mr. Belleville now as a director. And that caused us to take a look at the JPA agreement and realize that there was some things that needed to be updated in that JPA. So we've got county council looking at that. I'll ask Dan to maybe go through some of those things that we're looking at and trying to update.
Good evening, President Canepa and members of the council. It's nice to meet with you again today. And just as a quick note, we do have Jeff Norris and Dan Bennett behind the scenes as we have in the past. So we're at your service if we need to manage any questions that may come up during our presentation. In addition to Mr. Callaghy's comments, the things that we're doing almost on a daily basis are separating the two entities. But for most practical purposes, we're doing what we've always have done, and we'll talk a little bit later about that on our agenda this evening. More specifically, the CZU fire and COVID. That we've been separating the equipment. There's certain sort of similar equipment that belongs to the sheriff's office and equipment that belongs to OES in the form of generators and lighting units and those kinds of things. So we're working on that. I'm working with the budget office to create the new budget for OES under the CMO's office. Our team is working together like they have in the past. So it's really seamless to everyone that's listening tonight, but behind the scenes, we're doing all the formal processes to make sure that it's appropriately separated up to including the JPA. So we need to take a look at the language in the JPA to make sure that any changes that have occurred are addressed in that. So Mr. Callaghy is working with council on that, and we should have a presentation in more detail at our next meeting. But those are the kinds of things that are taking place on a daily basis, several meetings each day or multiple meetings during the week to get it done.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Belville? If so, please use the raised hand feature.
You do that.
Okay. Not seeing any raised hands. Mr. Callaghy?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but the things we're looking at really are just legal technical things in the document that we'll be bringing back to correct. Some of the things have just changed over time. The requirements have changed over time, updating of language and so on in the JPA. So we're working with county council on that. We'll bring it back to this council to review.
Great. And is there any public comment, Mr. Norris?
None listed. Mr. Freeman does have a raised hand.
Okay, Mr. Fruman.
Yeah, sorry for the delay. It's taken me a little time to find the raised hand button. Just a real quick question, Mr. Belville, on the separation of equipment from OES from the sheriff's office. Have you identified the need to purchase any new equipment that is required that both entities must have?
We were looking at that list this morning, as a matter of fact, and it's a pretty long list of equipment, and we didn't identify anything new that we need that we don't already have. In fact, we might be able to retire some equipment because actually when I was involved with the hazardous material team in the county, we purchased some trailers that are basically retiring because we've modified that equipment. So if anything, we may reduce the number of items on the list. There are some vehicle replacements that aren't currently in rotation that we'll have to add in. So again, I'm working with finance on that. But there's really nothing that we're worried about that we don't have. But it's also a really terrific opportunity to take a look at what we have and what services we will provide going forward. We want to be front and center for the county and for our partner agencies, those of you out there that are listening. So we want to change that model and be more at your service than we have in the past. So if we do find some deficiencies, I think this would be the time to do it. But right now, the long answer to your question is we don't think we'll have to purchase anything that we don't already have.
And Councilmember Fruman, it's a good question because I think your point is that, during the separation, is there anything that we'll need to duplicate? And I just want to assure this council that the full assets of this county as they exist with the sheriff's office will still be available in any emergency situation. It's really more of a change of reporting than really a change of the dynamics of how they'll operate. It'll be a seamless operation, but it, like Dan said, it does give us a good opportunity to look and see what we don't need rather than things that we need to duplicate or replicate. And we hope to, obviously retire some of those assets and save money doing that.
Thank you.
President Canepa, if it's all right with you, if I may go through the next two slides before we get to the CZU presentation, I'd like to just share a few pieces of information.
Yes.
All right. So that's the slide that I wanted. Just wanted to let you know that It's an amazing thing that we've been in the EOC. It's practically a 24/7 operation. We are in here communicating every single day of the week. As you know, we opened up on March 3rd because of COVID, but we've had a number of different incidents that we've been dealing with. And if you take a look at the calendar, it's amazing that we're already better than halfway through the first month of this new year. But in about 6 weeks, we will hit the looks like the 12-month point, one full year that we've been open. And during that time, next slide, Jeff, we've been filling these requests for the incidents. These files are a picture of our resource requests. They represent any movement of equipment or tasks that need to be completed, whether we move cones or set up testing at the event center, or move security in from law enforcement, or purchase some equipment for testing. We have 1,500 of these, better than 1,500 for COVID, and several hundred for fire. So we're up in the range of about 2,000 requests, which is absolutely unprecedented to be moving and directing that much work and coordinating that effort with all disciplines, with multiple counties, different outside agencies. It's a way for us to track all of what we do so that there's adequate reimbursement from FEMA and the state. And all that has to be measured at the end to make sure that we get reimbursement for the expenditures that we're putting out. It's very well organized. It's very impressive. And the team that I have here is working pretty hard to make sure that all that happens. So I couldn't be prouder of what we've been doing these last 10 and a half months or so. Next slide, please. Before I talk about the COVID disaster within the disaster, this was one of the worst fires we had. I just wanted to share with you, if I can, just Tuesday alone, this last Tuesday, 48 hours ago, we were dealing with an escalation of COVID, like we've all been talking about, prepping for vaccinations, which we'll talk about, which is significant in and of itself. We had the fire activity. There were a total of 13 fires between us and Santa Cruz County, ranging in around 10 to 30 or 40 acres. We had a 3-day wind event, which knocked out 5 of our radio towers. So we had backup power addressing that. One of the generators failed, so we had to deal with that. We had a SNF, or a skilled nursing facility, that lost power. We were prepared to evacuate 50 people. We were addressing with the wind potential PSPS events that we've seen already in the last 12 months with PG&E. And we were also preparing for civil unrest. So just that list alone that we were dealing with in terms of preparedness was really amazing. But we keep adapting, and that's what we do. And I think it's important for the council to know all of the work that's taking place so that you can rest assured that the county is prepared. If there are no questions, I think I'll move into the CZU fire update.
Before we do that, Ms. Hurt had her hand up, and Ms. Hurt?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It actually seems kind of inappropriate now, but I had a question earlier about the vehicle rotations, and I was curious if these were emergency vehicles, and do we have a zero emissions policy conversion on that? Seems kind of inappropriate after that long list of disasters, but that is my question.
We have a relatively small fleet of vehicles. We have 2 heavies, what we call 2 heavies, where we can tow equipment, and then we have light vehicles like sedans. And those sedans are old and they do need to be replaced, and they certainly aren't up to today's standard. But we will follow the protocols of our corporation yard that I believe, we have a set standard. Perhaps Mike, you can weigh in on that.
Yeah, just as a county, we're trying to convert as many vehicles to electric as possible as we retire them, if it's appropriate. Some of the areas like, emergency service vehicles are maybe not quite there yet.
Yes.
In regard to, but all the other vehicles, we really are looking to make them energy efficient. And vehicles that are good for the environment, obviously. So we are looking at that. We will continue to look at that as we rotate these vehicles out also, or even equipment, even heavy equipment that we can rely on, and that may be use alternative resources, energy to operate them. So we're looking at all of that.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Fruman's hand up. John?
Yes, thank you. A really quick question on the reimbursement you mentioned, Mr. Belville. What is the honest likelihood of getting money reimbursed from FEMA? typical FEMA reimbursement comes from localized emergencies where only one area of the country or one area of a state is affected. And here where it's nationwide, really worldwide, what's the likelihood that they're going to have enough money to reimburse everybody the way they normally would?
Well, I would say that in working with our finance section chief in the EOC, it's very likely that we will see significant reimbursement for the efforts that we put in. We talk a lot with the state. We have a state representative from Cal OES. We talk to other counties, and we hear over and over that San Mateo is doing a good job in terms of tracking the tasks and what we're getting accomplished over these past months. She's frequently in contact with her peers throughout the state, and we have conversations almost daily on how the revenues will work, what grants are open. So we feel that we're going to be very, very successful in the expenditures that we've had thus far. Mike, again, you may want to weigh in your conversations with Kim.
Yeah, and Councilmember Fruman, Dan's right. We were very lucky. We got in line very, very early when the pandemic hit. We were 7th in the country to get our paperwork in. Therefore, we were allowed funding. We've already received some of that FEMA funding back. As you know, with the Great Plates program, that's mostly a federal program. We are contributing to that, and we feel strongly we'll get reimbursed for that also. We do have our 6% contribution that will come directly from the county into that program, but that's, millions and millions. I think it's last time I checked, it's probably $30 million, $40 million into that program. So we're in a good position to get reimbursed.
Thank you. Thank you for being on top of it. I think that when it's on a first come, first serve basis, to some extent, having people that know this system very well in these positions is pretty critical. Thank you.
I might add, Councilmember Fruman, that, and it goes without saying, we have a good team, and all of us are proud. Everyone that's listening tonight are proud of who they work with, but our finance section chief seems to be the best of the best. She is absolutely meticulously detailed. Cannot say enough about her. She scolds us every day to make sure that we're tracking things appropriately and spending wisely. We don't spend recklessly. Everything's accounted for. We're very, very proud of her. So we think there's going to be a good return on the other side because of her efforts.
And the great thing about Kim is that she comes from the controller's office, which is obviously the checkpoint for us on everything that dots every I, crosses every T. So that is in part why she is the perfect person for that job.
All right.
Thank you.
That's gonna bring us to item 4, the update on the CZU fire and debris flow. Mr. Belleville.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So everyone knows about the CZU fire. It consumed a lot of acreage, and of course it went into Santa Cruz and devastated quite a large number of their homes. And it's not to rehash the fire. It's really about the recovery effort. So we work with the state almost daily on the recovery effort. So that is trying to get the people that were impacted by the fire back to their normal lives. And there's 3 particular areas that I just wanted to have a conversation with you about. It includes phase 1, phase 2 in our town hall meeting. So phase 1 is something that had to be approved through the state. And so in order to achieve phase 1, it's a plan by the state. It's a common practice that's happened in other previous fires, but you have to go through these multiple levels to actually see and approve and see the accomplishments of phase 1. It's not necessarily approved for every fire. But phase 1 is primarily, in its simplest terms, removing hazardous materials. So we identify the buildings that were burned and the damage that occurred. We track that with a fairly large team here: environmental health, OES, the sheriff's office. We work with the homeowners. We work with the state. We've had dozens and dozens of meetings. Once we identified those burned properties, along with CAL FIRE and the others, we do inspections on those properties. And we have a company that ultimately comes in and cleans up all the hazardous materials. So you might say, well, what does that mean? So it would be things like garages where batteries or chemicals burn or melt into the soil. Or it might be plastics that are stored next to the shed that burns. So all the plastic turns into a molten mass and seeps into the soil. So phase one was completed. We did that cleanup. We got all of our properties cleared. They checked the soils. It's all professionally done with companies that are aligned with Cal OES, and it's been completed. Phase two is currently underway. Phase two is when they actually remove the debris from the burned properties. So this would be what's the leftover ashes, the chimneys, the retaining walls, the leftover wood piles that didn't completely burn. So that's underway right now. And much the same process, phase one, phase two, this is what we can do for our homeowners to clean up these properties. Now, folks can opt out of these programs, and some folks in the rural area are skeptical of the government coming in on their property, doing inspections, getting the cleanup. But our folks have been very sensitive. We've had law enforcement officers go up and essentially hold the hand of people that are skeptical in that area. We've had our environmental health department go up there and do the same thing. So it's been an extensive collaborative effort to get our homeowners through phase one and phase two. We're very pleased for one reason that we didn't get a lot of rain is that a lot of the ash and debris didn't flow down and away from where these burned properties were. So if there's any consolation about a dry winter, this was one of them because we were able to clean up most of these properties before it flowed. During this process, we held town hall meetings, which is another common practice during these fires. And we held it out in Pascadero with quite a number of our department heads who are in charge of different sections of phase one and phase two. Mr. Callaghy, our supervisors were out there, and we had a conversation with the folks about phase one and phase two. We then followed up with two of these remote town hall meetings where we were able to address things that were changing in phase one and phase two so they remained informed. So as far as our fire recovery effort, it's significantly underway. We are still working on it daily. We still meet multiple times a week with those folks, but that's the process and where we're at right now at today regarding the complex fire. Next slide, please. And please, President Canepa, if anyone wants to interrupt before I finish this piece, I'm happy to answer questions. The second and probably more important piece of the CZU fire is the risk of debris flow. So once we started to have our town hall meetings with our residents, we were talking about fire past, meaning, all right, we're going to get into phase one and phase two. We didn't want tree limbs falling on them and getting injured. So we were having that conversation. And at the same time, we were saying in a couple of months, because this was a few months ago, we need to get ready for debris flow in the event of heavy rains. And so that was another project that had to be undertaken. And this is a significant problem that maybe many of you have seen after these significant burns where basically the landscape is burned completely to the ground. There's a significant risk of debris flow, rocks, mud, and other things coming down on other people that are below where the fire was and putting them at great risk. The most recent one that many people may remember is several years ago down in Santa Barbara County, where there was a fire and some months later, 20-something people were killed when their homes were buried in a matter of minutes. So it is a very common thing in California now. It's something we have to pay attention to after these catastrophic fires. And that's where we're at today. So our town halls that I spoke about a moment ago have bridged into having our folks that weren't impacted by fire now being ready for debris flow in the event that we get significant rains. So we continue to remain in communication with our folks, which is not easy because it's very rural. Some folks are off the grid. Some don't want to be bothered. Many of them may be impacted downstream. So we're doing our best to reach them. And the way we're doing that are these bullets before is Jeff Norris with me here is issuing the SMC alerts through text and emails. So some people think it's just text, but it's also emails. We also send regular emails to the residents that are in that area, warning them of debris flow. We have our WIA alerts, our wireless alerts have gone out. And we've also purchased some weather radios and issued them. So in the event that they lose power, are off the grid for some reason, we've issued little weather radios that are very robust, that are battery operated, and they can stay in tune with what the weather conditions are. So if we have a storm coming in, and we believe that we're going to have to do an evacuation, we can keep those people abreast of the situation. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But that is essentially the summary of where we're at transitioning from the CZU fire to debris flow and the risk of that this winter. Any questions so far, Mr. President?
Yeah, we do have a question from Miss Monet.
Hi, yes, you were talking about the NOAA weather radios, I assume. I live up near 84 and Skyline, and we do not get any reception for San Mateo County for the NOAA weather radios. I'm just wondering if there's, well, there was some talk of broadcasting from Mount Diablo, but they do not work in my area
Okay.
for multiple people.
All right. I have Dan, who's our radio technician on the line. Dan, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, or Jeff may have a comment to address that question
Okay.
or that concern.
Actually, we are actively working with NOAA and the National Weather Service. They are actually studying our county to determine where an additional transmitter site can be put in. Now, a lot of people believe that NOAA weather transmitters are owned by the federal government. They're actually not. The feed, the data that's sent on them is supplied by NOAA, but local governments actually own the transmitter sites. They also have to be positioned so they will not interfere with other sites, which is why we can't just move one in quickly. So we are actively working with NOAA. We are second in line behind Sonoma County for a special project that is actually going to make the county into several climactic zones. So we're going to have more than one alert tone. So we're working with NOAA every week, try to move that forward. And we do intend to have at least one new transmitter to cover areas that do not have good reception.
President Canepa, are there any other questions? Because I'd like to make one more mention on this topic before I move to the next item on the agenda, if that's all right.
I think, one sec here. Can you hear me? Did we, I think there's Deborah Bourne.
That's correct. If I may, I'd like to raise awareness that there is still a significant fire occurring in the vicinity of the Middleton Tract, Portola State Park Road, Alpine Road community. We have probably in this community within a couple of miles of this fire on Butano that's ongoing, that was flared up over the last couple of days with the high winds. We have about a good 50 homes, and we're all seeing it from our windows and back porches, and driving by it, or driving, seeing it as we drive on the roads around here. We've been understanding that this is a flare up from the old CZU fire, but we've had basically zero to very little information from CAL FIRE on the fire. We've seen no activity, no helicopters, no fire engines going by. So people, the first day when the fire flared up, all the neighbors are talking, of course, on Nextdoor and emailing and calling each other because we're all very anxious about the new fire, the flare up. But we understood that it was, fire wind driven, but we also understood it was within the boundaries of the CZU fires. I guess I want to make myself clear that I want you to realize there's still a significant fire. It's not huge. It's only probably in the range of 10, 15 acres at this point. CAL FIRE has told us that it's about 95% contained. The problem is, since yesterday and then to today, the fire dramatically has increased and come closer to our homes by, and it's actually all down to the old Hall Road, which it was during the CZU fire. So it's it has come very close to our homes, and people were starting to panic today and going, I need to, should we evacuate? And no, we're not hearing anything. And so I'm on the South Skyline Fire Safe Council, and so I have contact with some of the CAL FIRE people locally. So I called one of them and I said, we have seen no information from virtually anybody on this fire. And people are scared, and people are considering evacuating, and people are also losing credibility in the system, if you will, of alerting and informing us. So I did urge the CAL FIRE person that I talked to get information on the alerts, and I think he did immediately. Pretty much immediately after that, I saw something come through on it was our first and only alert through Zone Haven, I believe. But we need better communication out here, because as we are part of the county, and even though the answer, I guess, that I got today was, well, it's within the CZU perimeter, so we're not worried about it. Well, CAL FIRE may not be worried about it, but neighbors who see it from their windows and see flames at night, go to bed knowing there's flames outside their, outside their windows, it's not something you can just take for granted. And right now it's taken precedent over COVID and all the other fears we're living with. So I'd really like to urge all of you to make sure whenever there's a fire anywhere near an area such as ours, or whether it's down south, that residents are fully informed right away, because otherwise we're going to all run around, like chickens without heads. So that's my request, is please get these advisories sent out on your alert system. And I know it's a busy time for you all, but it's really important that the communities surrounding these fires are informed, because it's our homes. It's not just we're not just a metric. We're not a metric. We're people with homes and properties. So I appreciate your consideration of this.
Great. Thank you so much. I guess, Mr. Belleville, do you want to answer that in regards to the alert and how people are notified?
Sure. So, Deborah, it's nice to hear from you. We've chatted a few times. I can assure you, before I answer, that we have been in constant contact. I talked to Chief Cox about 45 minutes before the meeting. I got texted at midnight last night. I can't tell you how many texts we've had with regard to the number of fires. There were 13 fires. I mentioned in a few slides ago that there were seven of the larger ones. There were 13 of them. They were started primarily from trees falling into limbs. It was essentially catching the dry debris that was on the ground from the fire on fire, all of them very remote. And we've talked about evacuation. We try not to alarm people that there's something coming their way. I will talk to him about how we will send those messages out. Jeff Snorfs is with me. We've communicated frequently about when folks should be evacuated. We talk about it every day. Perhaps we can do a better job of saying, stay in place. You don't need to worry about it, but we also don't want to send out, frivolous or too many communication messages. So President Canepa, we can address that going forward. I could even call Deborah to make sure that we're meeting all her interests going forward. And I'll communicate with Chief Cox and our folks about doing a better job about that.
I appreciate that, because again, people do call me. They tend to call me because they know I'm on the Fire Safe Council and the South Skyline Association. So they know I have connection with, those people, that group. But I think, for your benefit, you will get fewer text messages, fewer 911 calls. People were calling 911, I'm sure, all over this area. It overloads that system. And again, people start to feel a lack of confidence in our services, which they shouldn't, because I know CAL FIRE is on the scene. But we don't know status. So I think people deserve to be informed and educated about what the, conditions are. And as you say, it's fine to say, there's a fire, but it's contained and there's no need to evacuate. I think the thing I learned today was they're basically letting it burn out, or trying to let it burn out. And that's important to know, but it's also important to know that they have people on the scene, because that's what we didn't know. We didn't see helicopters. We haven't seen emergency vehicles as we did in the CZU fire. We saw many emergency vehicles zooming by daily. We've seen none of that this time. So people were on edge that, maybe they're not really responding to this. So I think educating people, letting them know what's going on is very important.
Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Bourne, and thank you for being here tonight and sort of expressing your your opinions. Is there anything else on the CZU fire, Mr. Belleville?
No, sir, that should conclude that piece. The one thing I did want to show you very quickly is we've had essentially 3 false alarms with regard to the debris flow concern because of the weather systems. They all kind of turned into nothing. We do have a weather system coming in about a week. And I just want to throw a quick slide up here. These things are tough when you look at them for the first time, so I'll just explain it. This is next week. I'm looking at the box on the right. And as we go through this weekend and next week, a weather system comes in about a week. And if you look at the green on the left, that's essentially not a problem. The dot on the right is a lot of weather and rain coming. So now if we go to the map on the left here, you can zero in on where we're at. And there's going to be a considerable amount of rainfall up into the orange and red at about a week from now. So we expect the heavy precipitation to come between late Tuesday night and during the day on Wednesday. And it'll be, an increased risk of debris flow over this time in that bird scar area that we've been talking about. So we're going to have to pay attention to it. And it may be our first set of evacuations with the plan that we implemented a couple of months ago and are communicating with our residents. So just want to share that with you that if we do have a debris incident, this may be the first one next week, about a week from now or less.
Great. Is there any public comment at this time? Seeing none, that brings us to the next item, which is the update on COVID incidents and vaccine. Mr. Callahan.
Yeah, thank you, President Camp. I did talk about this at the on the elected officials call, so I'll give kind of a brief recap. Just to say that I was extremely proud of Mr. Valville and OES and the EOC and Ileana Rodriguez in conjunction with our health department and sheriff's office for standing up the first mass vaccination site, drive-through vaccination site in the state. They started off about a week ago, very small, about 400 people. They ramped that up to about 2,000 as a proof of concept that it can be done in a safe and massive way. And they proved that. From where it started on that Saturday to where it ended on the following Saturday was absolutely amazing to see. It was like clockwork. We had agencies, health plans in other cities and counties coming from all over the area to see how we were doing this. And it went beautifully. And I think, in total, there was about 100 people vaccinated during that time period. We could have done much, much more than that, probably 3,000 a day, but we're really hampered by the doses that we're getting and the distribution of doses to the county. It's just very, very unstable right now from week to week. It's very hard to plan and outreach. And we're still in phase 1A right now. The latest numbers I saw were about 33,000 in the county that were vaccinated in 1A so far. And that does not count the congregate care facilities, which we know many of those have been scheduled and are in process right now of having vaccinators go through. And that's the CVSs and Safeways that are going through there. And does not also count all the different health plans who have been vaccinating their first responders, their doctors and nurses in their health plans. So we're still working on that number to find out what that is. But I can tell you this weekend, we will be in conjunction with another health plan doing another mass drive-through at the event center. And we are limited in what we can do because of our doses, but that other health plan will be assisting us in running the operation, but we're going to be sending our IHSS workers through on Saturday and Monday. And then the other plan will be doing Sunday and Tuesday. So we'll have 4 days out there. We're in constant communication with the other health plans. They are preparing to get up and running in different ways, not so much for a drive-through right now, but we do have other mass sites available and ready to go should they decide to go through and implement a drive-through vaccination. Again, we know at some point in time, the manufacturing of these doses will ramp up to the point where we're getting a steady supply. So what Mr. Belleville and OES and the EOC is doing right now is really looking at every possibility and preparing for that day when we have a steady supply of doses, and how we can distribute them and how we can get them out to the community, how we can provide transportation and get it into and have the equipment to get it into neighborhoods, or at least get it going through neighborhood pharmacies or neighborhood healthcare facilities. Because of the storage issues right now, it makes it very challenging. This weekend, we'll also be utilizing the Pfizer for the first time in a drive-through atmosphere. The Moderna has been used primarily in the drive-through because it's easier to handle. The Pfizer, you need a pharmacist on the scene who reconstitutes the doses and make sure they get out in an appropriate manner. There's different handling of those doses that needs to take place. So it makes it a little bit more challenging for a drive-through. But again, we want to be first in line to show that it can be done to others in an effort to get as many people vaccinated as possible in a massive way. A lot of moving parts. You can't even begin to imagine what it takes to run a drive-through center with the processing of the doses and the security and the nurses needed and the medical staff and all the check-in people. It's just a huge, huge lift. But again, so proud of OES for the way they came through and did a fantastic job in conjunction with the sheriff and public works and health and everyone else involved in that. Just also, we are standing up a volunteer corps that can really administer doses for us, because we know it's a challenge to pull frontline nurses, especially now during a surge, off the front lines to handle these vaccinations. We've had other large providers ask us if we have any resources. So Dan and the group here are working on setting up that list that they can pull from. Got to update all their information to make sure that they're qualified. They have CPR up to date and all the other qualifications, and then the certification of them and ensuring of them in order to act in that capacity. So that is something that they're doing, and that is, again, a very, very heavy lift. Dan, is there anything else you'd like to say about the vaccination process?
You know, Mike, I think the only thing that I would leave the council with and President Canepa is that I personally, I would like to do with vaccines what we did with testing. We are constantly, we are more than leaning forward. We're like falling over, leaning forward to get these systems ready that you talked about. When we got a hold of testing, we did some creative things that ultimately put us #1 in the state in terms of the number issued, the locations, so that we could reach all of our people, all levels throughout the county. And we're doing that with vaccines right now. And we think if we lean forward, we were first talking about walk-ups and said, forget it, let's do drive-through. So we're creating these brand new models. The team has been fantastic behind me. And we're partnering with a number of different agencies. We're moving the testing out of the event center. We're going to make the vaccine and the vaccines at the event center a vaccine hub. We're talking to other entities throughout the county to ramp that up. And we think by leaning forward and having multiple different ways of delivering vaccines, whether it's Moderna or Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson when it comes on board, is we will be ready. We're leaning so far forward, we'll be ready. We also think it'll garner attention from Cal OES and maybe some other agencies where we may get some additional doses that otherwise would not have been available to us. So the more that we demonstrate that we're ready, much like we did with testing, we believe the strategy is that we'll perhaps get some more doses and be able to immunize the folks in our county. So that's our plan. That's what we're doing. It is a massive lift beyond comprehension, but we're excited about getting it done. And the more doses that come in, the readier we'll be.
Great. Thank you. Mike, can you just expand briefly about sort of the vaccine, equity committee we have and some of the work they're doing?
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, President Canepa, thank you so much. So we do have this vaccine equity committee, and really the focus of this group is to reach every corner of this county with the message that the vaccine is safe and you need to get it. And we want to make sure that we have a process to reach everyone in a culturally competent way And we're kind of reverse engineering the message that we typically get out there. And usually we put out a message in English and it's easily accessible, but we want to reach our hard to reach communities. So we're reverse engineering, starting with the creating messages for every group, and then expanding that to a countywide system. So we'll be working on those, the PSAs, but we want to, this group is extremely diverse that we have, this equity group, really representative of the entire county. We still have room for anyone else who wants to join also. But the whole premise is to reach everyone in this county with the messaging and let them know when the time comes where and when and how they can get vaccinated and how safe this is to get vaccinated. We want to get community leaders, you know, to the extent that we can, doing PSAs, showing that they are getting, trusted members of the community, showing they are getting vaccinated in the hope that it'll inspire everyone to step forward and get vaccinated.
Great. We do have some questions. I'm going to start with Lisa Gauchier, then we'll take Deborah Penrose, and then we'll take John Fruman.
Thank you so much for the presentation. You know, my concern with even the diversity group, I'd like to understand what the diversity group actually looks like and who's advising the county. We know that communities of color don't necessarily trust the government when it comes to vaccines. And how do we address that and make people feel comfortable? We need to really figure that out. We know that if you look at the now I can't even say the word, but the airmen, that vaccine, and with syphilis and things that happen in our communities, we have to make people feel like they're going to be getting the right vaccine and they're not going to be mistreated during that process. Can you tell me more of who's at the table and how we can be involved to make sure that we're getting the message to the right people in the community? Because in East Palo Alto, a lot of people are not feeling comfortable. It's the words that are coming from the government.
Oh yeah, Councilor Gautier, absolutely. We understand that, and that's why we really formed this group to be representative of the community, especially communities of color, that can reach into the community as a trusted member. We'll also be working with the CBOs that are trusted in those communities to step forward and say, it is okay, this is what's going on. We want to make sure that the trusted members of the community are vaccinated, that we get the messaging out to those communities in a culturally competent way and reach to every part of this county, not just mainstream, but this group is particularly focused on people of color in this community who don't trust government typically. And we know that is certainly the case in many areas of the county. And that's why this group was formed. Supervisor Canepa, or President Canepa, and Supervisor Slocum really are the chairing of this group, and it's really a diverse group. I can get you a list of everybody on this in this group, and any one of you is welcome to join this group. We meet typically on Thursdays in the about 10 o'clock in the morning, I believe, is what we've typically been doing. But anyone can join. If you feel that you have the opportunity to reach out in the community and give that trusted message, we'd love for you to be on this vaccine equity committee.
Thank you.
Ms. Penrose.
Yes, my question has to do with the thinking on having mobile vaccination vans available specifically for farm workers and folks like that may not have automobiles or be able to use their automobiles to get to a vaccination site.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Councilor, we are looking at that. It's a little difficult given the refrigeration requirements of the vaccine itself, and the way that this thing has to be. These vaccines have to be carried. A lot of times, it's amazing. You can't even shake them. They got to be very carefully carried out to the distribution site when they're out to those individuals giving the vaccine out, once they've been drawn into a syringe or once they've been prepared and thawed out. So we're really concerned about the vaccination site, but we know not everyone is going to be able to do a drive-through vaccine. That's not a model that's going to fit everybody. So that's why what Mr. Belleville was talking about, we've got to look at different models for different communities on how to get that vaccine through as many avenues as possible into arms of individuals in where they live that won't be able to drive to the event center or some other mass vaccination site in the county. And we continue to look for those opportunities. And I'm not saying it's impossible. It's something that actually that I've asked Mr. Belleville to explore, but we do have those transportation issues, and we're looking to see, can we put a sub-zero freezer in a van and make sure that it's reliable enough to be able to transport it out to different sites.
Thank you. I'm wondering, do you know about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Will that be requiring the same type of refrigeration, or do we not know yet?
I don't know for sure, but I'm hearing that it does not require the same refrigeration, and it's of course only one shot.
Yeah.
How accurate the shot will be as far as deterring the virus remains to be seen, and we know that the other two, Pfizer and Moderna, are about 95%. So we want to we're waiting to hear some of that information also.
Thank you.
Mr. Fruman.
Yes, thank you. Just in case the county gets to the point where, because you talked about resources for actually providing the vaccines, the medical professionals are dealing with the patients in the hospitals now, and it's difficult to take them away from that. If you get to the point where the number of vaccines available outpaces the number of medical professionals, I'm aware that the National Guard has already called up several medical units, and they're sitting at the ready to come to places to do these things. I'm guessing they're waiting for counties or areas to be ready, but I know they're out there.
Thanks, Councilman Fruman. We're interested in that also, but that'll be the governor deploying those to various areas around the state. We believe even with those resources, we're going to be short significantly numbers of vaccinators, given the challenges we have with the surge right now. And hopefully, we've seen the height of the surge, and hopefully it's starting to we're seeing some reductions right now. We hope that it continues that way. But there's a lot of incredible people in this county, doctors, nurses who want to volunteer on their days off or who are retired. I'm receiving messages, many messages daily. So we want to take advantage of these folks, at least have them ready. We may not need them. Maybe the National Guard will come in, but we're trying to think of every avenue that we can make sure that we're ready, so we're not taken by surprise. And if in fact those doses free up, or Johnson & Johnson or the other ones come on board, that we'll be ready to move at a moment's notice to get, because to us, every day counts in regard to a distribution of this vaccine.
Great. Ms. O'Brien.
Yes, I had just one quick question. Mike, how do you think we're going to reach out to the older adults that are homebound?
Yeah, we've been working with HPSM, the health plan of San Mateo County, and I think that everyone understands that the county responsibility are really it's really smaller than many of the multi-county providers in the county. That your Kaisers, your Pamp Sutter, your Dignity, all those are multi-county and have different ways of reaching their folks. But primarily, our population that we're dealing with are those that belong to our health system, our Medi-Cal, the ACE system, those that are homeless in our county. Those are our clients. It's a very, very hard to reach population. So we're putting plans in place, and we're working with HPSM right now on a pilot program with One Medical, where they're going to be calling up and setting up appointments and having them go in to One Medical and get vaccinated. And I think that it's going to be, Councilmember Keegan, a more of a concierge service, where we're going to have to call up and really set those appointments up and send out reminders. And in some cases, set up transportation and have them picked up and brought to locations where they can get vaccinated. And those are some of the things that the OES is working on right now.
We're building those things as we speak. Today, we're working on a number of those things that Mr. Callaghan mentioned.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Are there any additional questions for Mr. Callaghan or Mr. Belleville? Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to Mr. Norris on the update for alert participants.
President Canepa, if I may, just wanted to share with maybe the newest members. I know the existing members are familiar with the grand jury inquiring about our alert participation. And so we thought it was an important issue for just kind of a revisit of that. And I've asked Jeff to put together some basic information that he'll share now.
So the SMC alert continues to be the best method that we can rapidly notify members of the community, where we can get word in an emergency to the most people. It contains not just our text alerts or email alerts, but it also contains our reverse 911 system, and it is our access to the FEMA IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, which is evolving constantly. Right now, its main key is the wireless emergency alerts, which come to your phone. Many people see them via alert and think that it's an Amber Alert because it alerts on your phone the same way, showing up right on that flash page. We took a look at our data set that we have for SMC Alert. We have 5 years of specific data. That's when we moved to our current software. And we did a quarterly analysis of that software where we were able to pull out the data and do the math. Now, we provided with your packet for the meeting tonight with a summary of those quarterly data reflecting where the alert system was at a year ago and where it is at now. Now, natural disasters like the fires, the CZU fire complex, caused jumps in the numbers, which is why you see a large jump between the second and third quarter numbers in there. We've verified all the data, and we're trying to look to see if we had anomalies in earlier data. We're also anticipating that we're going to get new census data sometime next year. Now, since almost every community has grown in population, we're going to see probably a drop in the overall percentage when we get that new data. But what we have noticed is no community is stagnant or falling back. All of the communities are growing in the total count. Now, our partner counties around us, we are literally one of the key counties. We support and assist other counties in how they're setting up their alert and warning system. And we're hoping to be working with the state of California shortly when Cal OES implements a system almost similar, but on a statewide basis, particularly for counties that don't have an alert and warning system. And President Canepa, are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the board? You know, Jeff, I want to kind of give direction and ask if you would, if you would accommodate me on this request. If you can recall, about a year and a half ago, we had worked, my office and your office, with Senator Hancock's office about alerts and notifications. And while the numbers look good here and there's an increase, one of the things that we talked about, I actually think that you went to a select committee on behalf of the county down in Santa Barbara around the issues that would happen around Montecito and the communication. I guess, maybe we could put this as an agenda item, but I'd like to get an update sort of what's going on legislatively from the state. I'd like to understand what's happening around WIA, because I do think when we deal with these events such as, CZU, how do we make sure that we're communicating? How do we create a system? And I know it's going to be an expensive system. How do we create a system so rather than people having to opt in, they can opt out? And I think ultimately in terms of reach, and again, the numbers we've seen that there's a dramatic increase. I just think there's a lot more that we can do in this area around public safety and notifications. So you've done an incredible job sort of being our champion at the state. But if we could put that as a potential agenda item, maybe an update, a legislative update, both the federal and state level on communications, I think it would be helpful to the board, Mr. Norris.
Oh, absolutely, we can. So we actually had a major win in alert and warning. Back in September, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 2213, which took effect on January 1st, which clarified the definition of what is utility data that can be used for opt-out. It changed that definition to include data from cellular carriers, data from voice over IP phone systems. We actually do have 2 opt-out systems, which are part of the SMC alert. The WIA, which of course, if an individual wishes to, and I hope they don't, they can go into the control panel of their phone and opt out of the message. To us, the data says they still receive the message. Their phone has been set to ignore it. And we have our reverse 911 data, which we obtain on a monthly basis from AT&T and integrate into the system. We really do not count that data into these numbers. These numbers reflect the people who voluntarily are participating in the system. If I were to pull in our current opt-out data for our reverse 911 system, you'd see those numbers jump by over 300, almost 350,000 contact points. But I absolutely will continue to work with the state, and I have it as an action item to have something prepared when you wish to have it on the agenda at a later date.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any hands raised. Any public comment? All right, seeing none. Announcements. Are there any announcements from board member? Oh, excuse me. Carol Monet has her hand raised. Yes, Carol.
Hi. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the Woodside Fire Protection District's new WPV CERT program for CERTs, Community Emergency Response Team. And the head of WPV CERT has stated in an email this morning that he felt the numbers that he had previously seen for Woodside were 53.1%, not 19%. And so I'm just wondering about the difference in those 2 numbers. It seems pretty low for Woodside.
So we looked at the data. That was actually brought to my attention by Woodside's town manager today. And we started to look at the mathematics that had been in the old equation, and the old spreadsheet that we were doing calculations on may have a math error in it. We also looked at how we were deconflicting data, and we determined that we were actually double counting some people. It was a glitch in the computer software that was causing it would deconflict the message when it was transmitting an emergency warning, but it was not showing that as a single account. It was showing it as multiple accounts.
I see.
So when we updated our data, which we did at the end of December and into January, we found those duplicate accounts and then validated them to see which was most accurate. And in most cases, those duplicate accounts were exact duplicates. So once we removed those, that did cause the Woodside number to percentage to fall. Now, no one alerting system is ever going to reach everyone, and that's why we rely on multiple tools, our reverse 911, when it is life-threatening WIA, down to and including fire engines with loudhailers on it. We're good partners with the Woodside Fire Protection District, and we work with them on a regular basis. In fact, it was Woodside Fire Protection District, along with CAL FIRE today, who crafted the message, which was eventually requested by the fire chief who's in charge of the current fires in Botano. And when we got that request, we had that message out within minutes.
That's good. Well, I have a couple of questions. What is happening?
Carol?
Can I ask a few more questions or no?
Yeah, Carol, let me, you're a member of the public, correct?
Right.
Yeah, we do have 2 minutes, and we are not allowed to ask questions. If you would like to to make a statement, you're more than willing to do that. I thought you were a new council member. So forgive me, but if you'd like to make a statement, you're more than free to do that right now.
Well, my statement is I would really like to see the county to go to opt out rather than opt in for SMC alert. That would solve a lot of problems.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Monet.
And can I do further questions later or no?
Yeah, what I would suggest you do, Jeff, can you give your email out or put that in the chat box so that Ms. Monet can reach out to you? So what we're going to do now is Jeff's going to put his email in the chat box or get your email, and then we'll get connected that way, Ms. Monet, okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That brings us to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board? Seeing none. Public comment? I don't see any public comment. I will tell you that our next meeting for the Future Emergency Service Council meeting is the ESC meeting is April 15th, 2021. And with that, Happy New Year, and we will adjourn. Thank you very much.
Pretty close to. Hey, do you mind if I call this gal and see if she's there and willing to do